What do you think? Any questions? Anything?
I feel like sometimes I like try too hard to feel or like to see something or feel something. So I don't know. Do you like put a lot of thought into it, or do you just kind of? I think it's a hard middle ground to find between like thinking too much and then like letting your mind wander somewhere else.
Yeah, totally, totally. And there are multiple approaches. The way that I'm teaching you is to first look for neutral. And so what sort of effort is there for you to do at that part? Well, really none. I mean, other than you're not actively pursuing other lines of thought. If you find yourself automatically pursuing them, that's okay. Once you notice them, and then you expand back out of just being aware, and you don't really need to put a limit on that awareness. You'll kind of automatically do it, especially when we're in a room. But sometimes even when we're in a room, we'll limit the awareness to like a small part of the body or to the body. Or if we become more aware, we may kind of limit it to the room. But then we can even be aware that, whoa, I could kind of have attention all the way out to the horizon.
Yeah.
Like you've had that experience on the top of a mountain, where sometimes a wall can make you automatically like close off to that, but it's still there. It's like the sun's still there when the clouds are covering it. So the trickiest part in the beginning is you really want to have something to do. And when we're allowing neutral to come in first, it's just it's like a passive waiting. And we can support that neutral with practice, but we get in touch with that with practice, both working with other people, but also being mindful ourselves, cultivating deep relaxation, doing like conscious relaxation practices, meditation practices. But if we begin to have a relationship with our own neutral while we're conscious, because it happens when we're asleep, but if we can enter that state and get a sense of it, then we kind of feel the pathway to that. So then we can be better at partnering with someone else to get there. And then once you get there, that's the best place to treat from, where you can begin to actually do something like balanced ligamentous tension, like the book you were reading, where they call it articular ligamentous strain. If they first get into that deep let go, then those things that are still there, you can begin to motion test them. And that you have a little bit something more to hold on to in the beginning, because it's a little more like what you're used to doing in your day-to-day life.
Right.
So then you can find ease. You can go, okay, what about this way? So you get that part, it seems like, this way, that way. Now, before that, you are still finding ease, just you're not getting as involved with the ease in an individual region. You're listening to the body in its wholeness. And the reason we're being aware of all the way out to the horizon, and this was really well fleshed out and explained in, it's called Biodynamics of Osteopathy in the Cranial Field. So the reason we keep that awareness all the way out to the horizon is that, that's like our senses can extend that far. So it could be, say, the person you're treating, and one way their body extends that far. Because they can have perceptions that go all the way out to the horizon, or you can have a sound way off in the distance. The other reason is that because when these therapeutic forces come through, one of the best ways to conceptualize them, to allow them to come through, is that it's like they're coming from the horizon. So they're like coming from this source that's beyond our control. They're always present, but we can't just grab them and make them do something. We're looking to sort of help stuff line up so they can move in and then synchronize everything so that it's then harmonized, lined up on its own, maintained through that force. So in the first phase, you just got to kind of be comfortable with the not knowing, and be like, whatever's present there, like distinguish it. So, and then you may start to notice that different things are present with different sorts of people. Like you may be like, I feel more restless. And sometimes what you're feeling can give you information about what's going on with the patient. Because when it begins to present itself, this information from the patient, it can come in different ways. It's almost like, if a plant is beginning to bud up from the ground. When you're beginning the practice and you're just waiting, it's like the seed is in there. And the seed is going to undergo germination, and then it needs to develop its roots. And then at some point, it's going to push up through the ground into, we could say that's awareness. So when you become aware of this being receptive to this information, then you can be aware of when you do a little something, how does it respond?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the key is, if you look at someone, you push them, you can see how they respond to you pushing them. But the key is we want to be connecting on that level where we can work with the healing forces. And so that's why we blend very gradually, and we're looking for inherent motion, and we're looking to accommodate and sync up with inherent motion that's present. So really it's just, keep practicing,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll just become so natural. Like when I first started, it was just amazing. How can this be possible? And I didn't learn this way first.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a little more like fascially. And I'll teach you that too. But I think it's easier to go from this to that than the other way. It's a little hard to let go of the fascial way if you're not grounded in this. This would be the fluid body.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking to become aware of the fluid nature. Because if you look at something like it's tissue, it's going to look and act like tissue. If you interact with it like it's tissue.
Mm-hmm.
If you interact with it like it's fluid, then it'll act fluid. A good way to get a mechanical example of this is if you get cornstarch, you mix it with a bit of water so it flows, then take your finger and push the cornstarch really fast.
Oh, yeah.
You've done that before?
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go slowly, your finger will just slowly enter in, and there won't be any resistance.
Right.
So it's kind of in the same world of blending with things and following ease, or treating something like it's fluid.
Mm-hmm.
And you just, you got to develop those pathways. It's really valuable once you do it, right? Anything really valuable is generally it takes work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like you have to persist in the face of discouragement, and just have faith that, the people like me saying, "Oh, just keep practicing," like that's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Anything else? Any other questions?
One patient brought it up today, the indirect treatment versus direct treatment. Do you ever use direct
Yeah, sometimes.
here? Okay.
Sometimes. Either way can be fatiguing.
Yeah.
If you do a lot of direct, it can be physically fatiguing. If you do a lot of indirect, it's perceptually fatiguing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So sometimes if you're doing a lot of one, you may feel like doing the other. But the more conditioned we are, or the less that we're scheduling ourselves so that we're getting too fatigued, then the more we can really just choose.
Mm-hmm.
And I just find indirect to be so much more dynamic, to be so much more meaningful, where the body is letting go. And it's kind of a freely made choice. Like this is the most natural expression of it. Where direct is much more like the practitioner is trying to force the issue.
Right.
And when we do indirect, we can even be more direct about it. That's like the book you were reading.
Mm-hmm.
That's like being very pushy with indirect. You can exaggerate it. You can put activation forces to try to make it come back. And sometimes that's in service to trying to get it to do something faster.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can let go of being in a rush, and we can really be neutral and be aware of what is, and just be with what is, not just with our awareness, but also physically be with what is, and that is in that subtle balance of tension, then it's gonna let go. We're doing the strain's job for it, and so the strain can gradually relax and let go. And maybe if we rush it, we might not get as full of a release. We'll still get a release. It's not going to be bad, but we may be kind of truncating as much as we can get. I've seen this as I've been treated by certain osteopaths. It's like we don't know what we don't know. So when someone else treats us, if we know how to treat, and we can be aware of what's happening, we can see other osteopaths' blind spots. And what I've seen in not everyone who's treated me, but in a lot of people that treat me, that have treated me in the past, they'll initially engage something, and they'll be the very beginning of a release, and they'll be like, oh, there it goes. All right, and then they'll move somewhere else. But then I've met other osteopaths and worked with other ones where they find it, and they notice that beginning of a release, and they move with it, but then they stay. And I can tell when it hasn't, internally I can tell, oh, that's not it. It's not gone after that first little release. And when things are really old and chronic, sometimes you have to stay with them for a really long time. And if you're not paying attention, you may think you're on the wrong thing or you're doing it wrong, because it's going it's like a glacier. The change, the movement is happening so slowly. But I've had the privilege to work with one really good osteopath that would just stay with it. He'd have really long appointments. I'd be there for an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
So, the key is once you can be aware, once you begin to feel the balance, then the practice really teaches you. And just periodically someone needs to point different things out for you, different distinctions. But you have to have the experience before you can get those different distinctions pointed out. Otherwise, they just become thoughts that get in the way of your perception.
Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions?
I don't think I have any more.
Cool.